Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. I am available to deliver keynote presentations and workshops for your company or for your conference. Reach out to me, davedelaney.speaks.com, or email me and we can talk. Now on with the show. As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long, and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. On LinkedIn, you'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives. 10 million are C-level executives. You'll also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B, and they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn is the social network that drives the most visits to my website. From all the different articles and interactions that I do on LinkedIn, I have to tell you, LinkedIn is awesome. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/NPN. Terms and conditions apply.
The industry needs to have financial professionals who actually understand it, because it's actually very complex. The way the music industry works I would say it's extremely complex.
Nice
with Dave Delaney.
Welcome to the Nice Podcast, all about communication, collaboration, and becoming better leaders. I'm your host, Dave Delaney from Futureforth.com, where we help you retain talent and improve culture and communication so you have happier, more connected teams. Today, I am speaking with Andrew Kintz, Executive Vice President of the Music Industry Group and Private Client Services at First Horizon Bank. Andrew, welcome to Nice.
Thank you. That's quite a mouthful as far as an intro. Lots to talk about there.
Yeah. I'm excited to have you on the show. Now, my first question is always the same question, which is, what's the nicest thing someone has done for you recently?
Oh my gosh. My wife this morning basically took care of the children, getting them to the 2 separate schools. And so I could be actually at an appointment on time that was at my church. And so super helpful. That came to mind first.
Yeah, it's amazing actually how often it's our spouse that is the nicest person. It's pretty, and it makes a lot of sense because I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for mine. Like literally, I wouldn't be sitting in Nashville. That's for sure. So yeah, very cool, very cool. Let's get started. Actually, let's talk about some of the work that you do at First Horizon Bank. So as I mentioned in the intro, you're the executive VP of music of the Music Industry Group, and we're in Nashville, which is really the holy land for that. And then also Private Client Services. So maybe we could talk a little bit first about the Music Industry Group. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And I've been a music industry banker since 2009. So this summer it'll be 14 years that I've been in music industry finance. And it really is a deep love and passion of mine. The business is so much fun, especially if you love music, but just consuming it, following it, seeing live music. And it's also a lot of fun just because it is a national business. The majority of our clients are not here in Nashville. About 25% of our clients are here, and the rest of our clients are spread out across the country with some concentrations in Los Angeles and New York.
So what does it entail? So are you typically helping provide financial services to artists, or are you,
oh my gosh, it's a full, I call it a full bank within a bank, only for music industry, corporations, businesses, individuals that are all in the music industry. That's the one common denominator, but it is both to large music companies. Those would be like record labels or music publishers or artist management firms or business management firms, agencies, live music companies, festivals, venues, all of those companies and corporations that work in the industry. And then it is also the individuals, which includes artists, includes songwriters, includes even heirs, if basically copyright holders. A lot of times folks inherit song catalogs and they want to use those catalogs to finance their own projects. And so it's both individuals and companies. I call it a bank within a bank because most banks, they'll segment. They'll say this group banks corporations, this bank, banks medium-sized businesses, this bank banks small businesses, this bank banks wealthy individuals, this bank, this part of the bank banks, the kind of up and coming individuals. For us, it actually doesn't matter. All that really matters is, are you a person in the music industry or are you a company in the music industry? And if so, we generally can provide, yes, financial services. It's a lot of, the loans and deposits, the typical things a bank does, but I would say they get specialized to music because very often they're secured by music copyright. They're secured by song catalogs, rights to the royalty streams that are coming off of songs, which again, the average banker is not going to understand the way that cash flows within the music industry and understand the laws that regulate, the royalties and what needs to be paid to a copyright owner.
And how this is a division that you created, right?
It is. Yeah. So in 2016, I came to what was then called First Tennessee Bank. We changed our name along the way to First Horizon as we expanded well outside the state of Tennessee. And yes, it was basically an opportunity to start something fresh for the bank. The bank didn't have a music industry presence. They had a couple of clients in the music industry in Nashville, but no dedicated division to the group. And so it was fun. We started the division from scratch in 2016. So we've been at it for almost 7 years now, and it's been a whole lot of fun. Just from winning our very first client relationship to really growing into a much more substantial business over this time period.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so for you personally, I guess are you a musician yourself, or just a fan, or tell me?
Oh my gosh, I can strum chords. I've always been a singer. I've really sung my entire life, oftentimes in organized groups.
Oh wow!
And I love to sing. And I've got one of the bankers that I work with here in our music industry group. We've enrolled in battles of the bands and gotten up there, and we've had some pretty good showings. I mean, it's hard to compete in Nashville. There's a lot of talent. Even folks sitting in the law firms and the accounting firms and the banks still have a lot of great talent because it's Nashville. And so I love to sing. So my voice is my instrument, but I can strum some chords on a piano and a guitar to try to accompany my voice.
Yeah, when I moved to Nashville in 2007, I was working with Emma, the email marketing company here in town.
Yeah, and I know the guys. I know those guys. That's cool.
Yeah, Clint Smith. Yeah, he's a great guy. And so when I was working there, they decided it would be fun to rent out. At the time, it was called The Basement, old venue, which apparently is still around. I just learned
on 8th Avenue. Yeah, it's a great venue.
Yeah,
it's cool. They rented out the whole thing. Yeah, it truly is in the basement of that record store.
Yeah,
keep going.
It used to be Grimey's there. Yeah, I didn't realize I just heard about this the other night, that somebody was going to a show there, and I'm like, I thought that closed. Like, I know there's the Basement in East Nashville. For our listeners, we're getting into Nashville geekery here, so I apologize. But the Basement is this cool, dark, kind of small little venue, and we rented it out and had like you're saying, like a battle of the bands. Now, at the time, there was maybe 30 of us, 40 of us working in this little house in Hillsborough Village here in Nashville for this email company. And so I was going to do something silly. I don't really play anything, a few chords, so that's about it. So I was going to do some sort of silly karaoke thing or something. But what happened was I realized, like, oh my God, like everybody I work with is a gifted musician. Like, it's not a joke. Like, it was totally and not just country music as one would expect out of Nashville. There's rap and punk and blues and folk and country, of course. So it was like, but it was such a shock to me. I mean, not a surprise, I guess, but I realized like, oh yeah, like LA with actors, I guess, right?
It's like that. It's like, everyone that's serving you at your table is probably about to be in a big show on Netflix. It's in LA here.
Yeah.
So they're about to get an incredible, cut on Pandora or Spotify.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, my daughter was just in New York for her. She's in the choir at school. They did a trip to New York, and they went to one of the restaurants where all the servers sing to you, and but they're all like aspiring Broadway performers who are like incredibly talented, and they're serving tables, doing their thing. So hoping to be discovered. So yeah, it's an interesting cool world here.
It is. So I love that business, and it's been a whole lot of fun building it. The clientele are just so interesting and creative. I mean, even those that are running, pretty large corporations, called a large record label or a large music publisher. The companies also have this creative element we're talking about. I know we've been talking about Nashville, but if you work with the CEO and CFO and C-suite at a record label working on financing their growth as a company, you're generally going to be interacting with people that also absolutely love the music industry, and they got into it for the heart. They didn't get into it for the money. They didn't get into it because it was, this crazy intellectual problem. They got into it because they absolutely love music. And that's kind of the way that the firms work. I mean, including my group here at First Horizon, but it also includes our friends in the other banks that dedicate to this space. It's just everyone absolutely loves being part of the music industry because you're essentially, helping music proliferate, help it get created, help it get proliferated, help it be invested in. And that is that feels good. I mean, most people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, which really helps, honestly, the culture of the team. People are all, honestly, working harder and being even more productive because they care so much.
And as far as like the chocolate and peanut butter as it pertains to your career, obviously, moving into this and creating this music division makes so much sense. And obviously, as a singer and a fan yourself, your history is in banking, right? Like way back to 2000,
yes,
1998.
I was 21. Yeah, when I was 21 years old, I was hired by SunTrust Bank in Atlanta, and it was their classic training program. It was their corporate commercial banking training program, where they essentially taught you as a fresh out of undergrad, in the time young man. They taught me how to evaluate risk and understand the risk that a company bears and how a bank can help a company grow, and how to evaluate a loan opportunity for a bank, and how to understand the way a bank can help facilitate payments for a company as they're, trying to pay their vendors and trying to pay their employees and all those things. So you really learn how to become the banker for a company. At the time, I was in Atlanta, and it was all for Georgia-based companies. We got a little outside of the city. It was a great training ground. In fact, I really appreciate the bankers that have some background in business, commercial, or corporate lending. The majority of my music industry team has that. They were generalists in commercial banking, which I think is actually really unique to us. We have all these, there are a number of banks that specialize in this business, 6 or 7 in the country. And really our flavor is, hey, we're kind of commercial forward. I think we have a lot to offer a music corporation. Now we bank the individuals too, but some other groups are more private banking forward. They want to bank the individual artist, the individual that's been really successful in music. Where with us, we tend to start with companies and then move toward the individuals who are in the company, or the stakeholders, or the artists that are signed to the label or to the publisher. And that's kind of the way we go about it. But so long story short, I love the skill set that comes from a great a commercial banker, someone that's trained in how to evaluate risk for a company. That's wildly valuable, and it tends to be what our music team here is made up of.
I find it's what is it about employee retention. Now, I only have a couple case studies, yourself and Dave Briggs, who was on a previous episode here. But what is it with professionals in the banking sector and the retention that takes place in these positions, or at least working for these companies? Like, I see, like, you worked for SunTrust for like almost 18 years, and then you've been with First Horizon for nearly 7 years. So can you speak to that? What is it? Is it about promoting from within? Is it about perks that are involved? Things like that. Like, what is it about the banking industry that seems to have a pretty high retention rate?
Parts of any bank, have lines of business where the retention is really high, and then they have other lines of business where it might be a little lower. And I think the specialty divisions tend to have very high retention rates. This is across all of banking, not only at First Horizon. As I've noticed, I think it's because people get to really dedicate themselves and really embed themselves in an industry. If you asked anybody on my music industry team, hey, you met them in an elevator and you said, "Oh, what industry are you in?" They would say, "Oh, well, I'm in the music industry." And then they would say, "What do you do in the music industry?" He would say, "Oh, well, I provide financing to companies and individuals and other financial services to companies and individuals who are in the music industry." And so it digs in everybody. And that's different. That's different than saying I'm a banker. That's different than saying, I'm in banking. Nobody that works on that team for me would ever say that. They really say, no, we provide a really specialized service to an industry that is deeply needed. I feel like the industry needs to have financial professionals who actually understand it, because it's actually very complex. The way the music industry works I would say it's extremely complex.
What are some of the most complex aspects of the music industry?
Well, take this. If a song that's created by an American songwriter that is owned by an American publisher, if that song is played in Sydney, Australia, or Tokyo, Japan, or Cape Town, South Africa, or Cairo, Egypt, name wherever it's played, the copyright owner and the songwriter are entitled to a royalty. And so if you take that one little it's going to be a micro penny for that one play. But think about monitoring that, understanding it, and think about having to collect those royalties and then get those royalties distributed under U.S. copyright law. That in and of itself is one extremely small single thing. Now multiply that by billions. Billions of songs being consumed, billions of plays every day, tons of it American music. And so all of a sudden you've got this, it becomes a pretty complicated math equation. If you're going to try to model something like this out in Excel, it'd be crazy. And it really requires intermediaries. And so, if you are, and let's say you're Jason Isbell, an incredible artist and singer and songwriter. If you're Isbell, he cannot go represent himself and go collect royalties from, some place in Europe. You have to have an intermediary. You have to have someone that is out there collecting, basically monitoring the consumption of music worldwide and collecting royalties on your behalf and distributing them to you and your publisher. And that's just on the basically what I call the composition piece. That's the publishing asset. You've got a similar thing going on, yet another complexity with the master recording, which is a second copyright. So, anytime you listen to a song, you're consuming two copyrights. And so if you listen to All Along the Watchtower by U2 on its Rattle and Hum album, you're actually consuming a song written by Bob Dylan in the 1960s that has a master recording that's by U2 in the 1990s. And so at that moment, everybody needs to get paid a royalty. It's just a different kind of royalty. And so Bob Dylan and Bob Dylan's publisher needs to get paid for that play. And then on the label side, there's also royalties that are attached to the master recording. And so, U2's record label, I think was Island at the time, and as well as the U2 themselves need to get an artist royalty. So that's one song, one play, and 4 people need to get paid. I didn't even mention the producer of that. There's producer royalties. Again, so all of a sudden you get very complex, and that is for one song. And now think about catalogs of thousands of songs, and then and taking that as collateral and understanding their cash flow. It just gets very, very complex very quickly, and trying to understand it. And I spend a lot of time trying to explain it as well. A lot of people try to compare it to commercial real estate because it's similar. I mean, it's an asset. It's got cash flow, commercial real estate from its leases. But it would be more like if you had a building that had, let's just say it's a huge catalog that has 10,000 tenants and 10,000 leases, and the building itself can be broken up into its constituent parts. Literally, you could sell half of one room for its value, for its actual value, not discounted value, because you can just say, okay, I own, I'm entitled to one half of the royalties from that one song. And so at the end of the day, I mean, to me, it's actually a far better asset. It's one of the most recession-proof assets I've ever worked with in banking, because I used to work in the generalized side of banking. They've taken a lot of different assets as collateral, but the song catalog it's fantastic collateral because it generates cash flow regardless of who owns it.
I was going to ask you. So 2 questions about this, or I guess a question and a point.
Search engine optimization can be confusing, but your business can benefit from it regardless of what you do. SEMrush, an all-in-one digital marketing suite, can cover key SEO activities, including tracking your competitors' keyword strategies, improving search rankings, and much more. Why choose multiple solutions when you can use just one? Start your free trial today and get on top. Go to bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/SEMrushMPN.
First of all, the point is Jimi Hendrix perfected that song. So I'll just go ahead and say that.
Well said. That's my favorite version of that song. I also like Neil Young's version.
Yes.
I really like Dave Matthews' version of that song. But I agree that Jimi Hendrix is by far the most popular version of that song.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm a diehard Neil Young fan, but I digress. Diehard, big time. But anyway.
I've seen him live.
Oh, me too.
An incredible venue.
Six row, almost in the center at the Ryman, and he played solo.
Whoa.
And so it was just him on stage on the organ. Then he'd go to this piano. Then he'd pick up an electric guitar. Then he'd pick up an acoustic. And then he was just going back and forth, picking up instruments and playing. And it was religious. In fact, just explaining it right now, I'm getting chill bumps.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not trying to one up you, but I just got to tell you this.
Okay,
the week of my 19th birthday, Salzburg, Austria, Neil Young fronting Pearl Jam. Eddie Vedder's not there.
Yeah.
And Pearl Jam and Neil Young are playing together on the old square outdoors in Salzburg, Austria.
Wow.
That same week I was going from 18 years old to 19 years old, and it was awesome.
I can imagine.
So
yeah, it's amazing.
Good.
His new stuff. He's playing with a band beyond. I mean, he's playing with Crazy Horse still, but he's also playing with Willie Nelson's kids in Promise of the New. The band.
Lucas Nelson.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Lucas is awesome. I like Lucas's solo stuff a lot.
Yeah, very, very cool. Okay, geeking out on the Neil Young. My question was, so do you work in tandem with a law firm? Because I would imagine you'd need to release the lawyers in order to manage those funds that are being either paid or recuperated or what have you.
We need lawyers that represent the bank on our catalog secured transactions to essentially basically perfect our lien on a music catalog. Like we file a UCC lien in the courthouse wherever we're wherever the owner of the catalog is based, our borrower. And so but they have attorneys too, because they have attorneys that are representing their interests as we're kind of redlining and working through our loan agreements to decide what rights the borrower has, what rights we as the lender have, what would happen. And I could say this, I've never foreclosed on a catalog in my 14 years of lending money secured by catalogs, nor have I ever, had to foreclose on essentially what I'd call a songwriter royalty stream. We do a lot of songwriter royalty loans where we're not actually taking an asset as collateral. We're just taking an assignment of cash flow. And in that, those have all worked out really well too. So, at the end of the day, even with all the lawyers that go to, represent our rights, and then the lawyers on the other side that represent the catalog owners' rights, we still, all the deals have worked out really well thus far.
Who is someone that was especially nice to you in your career?
Oh my gosh. When I first arrived in Nashville, I came to an office that had this incredible leader. His name was Brian Williams. He worked for Third National, and then he worked for the predecessor firm, SunTrust. SunTrust acquired Third National. And so he would be considered one of the pioneers in music industry banking, beloved by the music industry. And he passed away way too early when he was 46 years old in a just tragic accident out on a lake east of here. But the people in that office who loved him so dearly and had worked for him and were hired by him and clearly missed him dearly, they, instead of saying, who is this new guy from Atlanta, they were so helpful to me. So it started with them. And their names are Penelope and Lori and Diane and Ed. And we have these just wonderful people that helped me so much because I did not understand music industry banking. And I was coming in as the manager of that office, not really understanding it, And so that was really magnanimous of them. And then beyond that, there was a group of people that, were almost like they might have been clients, but of that group, but it was more that they were just advisors who cared. And these were people that loved that music industry group, also loved Brian Williams, and missed him dearly. But they taught me the music industry business from their standpoints. And this was, I'll just say their first names. This was Tim and Gary and Carrie and Mary Ann and Clay and Mike. And I just think of all these people that in that first year, the welcome and the willingness to answer my not so smart questions. So that was a group of people, their willingness to spend time with me and teach me the ins and outs of the music industry from their perspective. So these would be the people running ASCAP, running BMI, running the publishing firm, running the business management firm, running the artist management firm, running the agency. These are people that were high-level executives that were willing to sit down to this very new person in town. There's another one named Dwight, who I remember just answering question after question I had because he basically told me there was no dumb question. And so I asked him a lot of questions. And I've just always been really grateful to the way the community responded, not only the team that I got to work with, but also the people who loved and cared for that music industry division of SunTrust Bank, and they were just so kind. So I was moved by that, and it basically made it so I never wanted to return to my hometown of Atlanta. I wanted to stay in Nashville for good after that kind of reception.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's so great that everybody took you under their wing to kind of show you the ropes and to
they did.
And to answer those questions too. I would be curious to see if you would have the same experience in a New York, let's say, or a larger city. One thing that I found moving to Nashville, obviously Canadians tend to be pretty nice, I hope, but moving to Nashville, the Southern hospitality and the friendliness of folks I don't think there was anybody that turned me down from a coffee invite just to kind of get the lay of the land. Do you think that might have played a part in that, or do you think just people?
It did.
Yeah,
it did. Yeah, the accessibility of executives is incredible. I don't think it's unique to the music industry. I do think it's unique to Nashville, and it is not that is you can't get a meeting with an executive in New York or LA or Atlanta or Miami or these other great cities but there is a piece of it where it is almost like people are just paying it forward a lot here. In essence, now I'm 46 years old, and I absolutely will meet with anybody that has a hunger to learn about the industry, or maybe wants to get into one part of the music industry, or maybe even wants to be a music banker. I'm going to meet with anyone just because everybody was willing to meet with me. And so that is in our culture here. And I love it. I really appreciate that about this city.
Yeah, and I think it gets back to Gandhi's whole thing about being the change you want to see, but by treating people the way you want to be treated, which is also something that I've kind of instilled in my kids. Obviously, treating yourself well first, but treating others well, treating them the way you want to be treated, is so important. And I think, to your point just then, that you have sort of paying it forward that way because people were that great to you at the beginning of your kind of tenure here in the role. So that's pretty cool, pretty impactful, and a good reminder for listeners, no matter where you are, the cooler you are with the people that you work with and in your life, the better it is all around. So
well said.
Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly right.
Yeah,
so true.
So I do want to talk a little bit about your work in the private client services side.
My other job.
Your other job. Yeah. What is this? Is this like a 50-50 split, or how does this break down?
Funny.
Yeah.
I really do. I really do change clothes in the middle of the workday. No lie. I really do, depending on what meetings I go to. Most people in the music industry do not want to see, the sport coat and the slacks and the
right.
dress shoes. But most people in private client either, there's almost an expectation that you're going to dress like a financial professional in private client. So there's so I change clothes sometimes, but I love that business too. The reason I love that business has a lot to do with the people that are on that team. So again, I did not start that business. I inherited it, and I inherited that business of just wonderful, wonderful people who are so committed to client service. It's kind of that same feeling that you would have, when you picture, one of the upper echelon hotels, or if you ever went to Blackberry Farm or something, you would experience this level of service that is just above and beyond and is remarkable. It is something you would write home about. It is something that you notice. And so this team of people, they are just so committed to that for their clients' families. And so they're essentially working with client families that are generally wealthy and high net worth families. And the reason why that distinction is made is not, hey, they only want to help wealthy people. It actually has more to do with the issues that come up related to folks who have accumulated a lot, and people that have a significant net worth. There's just more. There's more to juggle, and they actually need more advice, I find, at that level. That just gets a little complex. I'm talking about setting up trusts. I'm talking about, deferred compensation and insurance. I'm talking about, setting up financial plans for multiple members of the family. I'm talking about, I'm going to call it human capital management. You've got a family run business, a lot of wealth tied up in that business. How do you think about generation 2 and maybe generation 3? And you need to talk to somebody who understands these things and has a lot of experience with it, working with other folks who have also, basically come across the same challenges really because of their wealth. I do find that, it's not mo money, mo problems, but wealth does create some complexity where you need a very good advisor / banker / financial professional. You need to be able to, you need to be able to have someone who's got a deep understanding of what the needs are of wealthy families, wealthy individuals, to be able to provide them great advice. And people that have a lot of experience doing that, who have seen this play out over decades. And so we've got a lot of long-term veterans that have worked in that private client business who really, who just are just beloved by their clients. It's amazing.
So with the private client services section and the music industry group section, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing as it pertains to communications?
Well, that's a good question. I think that the challenges have actually lessened because of COVID. It was one of the silver linings that came where we can gather everyone whenever we need to gather them. And in 2019 and before, there was this cadence around, you would have your monthly, sales and strategy gathering where everybody would meet. And then you wouldn't have that entire group until a month later. And then in between, you would have some one-on-one meetings and maybe a smaller group. But there was almost this cadence, which now has all been thrown out. And the communication has increased so much more from being able to gather on relatively short notice to be able to talk through maybe a new strategy that we've decided to implement with our clients. It's also been a place where, I don't know, that might have also come with just a comfortability. I stepped into that leadership role in 2018. And so now I'm approaching my 5th year this spring with this team. And so, it takes a little time to gel and form and norm and really gain a high level of trust and affinity for one another. And so, we're there. And it actually, going through the pandemic together helped us because we kind of had to get into the trenches. I don't know how many bankers you've talked to about PPP loans, but we were doing all kinds of work to help, especially small businesses, which most of our private clients, they owned small businesses and they had some very significant needs in the first year of the pandemic. And we all, it was some of the hardest work I've ever seen in my banking career from a group of people. I'd never seen anything like it as far as, it was nose to the grindstone, but it was for such a noble cause, basically to keep employees at these clients' firms employed. That's what it was about. And so it didn't matter if it was midnight or 1 a.m. It didn't matter if it was Saturday or Sunday. It didn't matter. It was almost like we needed to stand in the gap and do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I am a recipient of said loan and very very happy I did.
You had a good experience with whatever bank you used.
I did. Yes. I wish the other one would be forgiven, but that's a different story. All right. So let's move on to the lightning round now. Complete this sentence. Nice guys and gals finish.
Last.
What is a nice book that you recommend folks listening check out? Could be nonfiction, fiction, doesn't matter.
And There Was Light. It's the biography of Abraham Lincoln by John Meacham.
Oh, nice. Cool. And how is Andrew nice to himself?
Walking in Edwin Warner Park as an act of self-care.
It's a great place to do that too. And then if you had a billboard, what would it say?
Thank God for my wife.
That's a good, in the comedy world, that's called a callback. Well played. Now, normally that's where I wrap things up, but I have a couple other follow-up questions. So
Sure.
Favorite concert?
I might have named it that Neil Young concert, but
Yeah.
I went to see Pearl Jam in Fenway Park for my 40th birthday in 2016.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
that was legendary. I love Pearl Jam. I really love them.
Yeah, I had a run-in with them where I I went to go see the Red Hot Chili Peppers play a small club in Toronto in 91. And the two opening bands were bands I'd never heard of. And it was a small club. And the two opening bands were one Pearl Jam and the other was the Smashing Pumpkins. So that was
it's like the Seattle train coming to Toronto.
Chewing through Toronto. Yeah. It was an incredible. That was like Eddie Vedder.
Would that be yours? Was that yours? I mean, what was your favorite?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think Neil Young solo at the Ryman was my favorite. Although I also took my kids and my wife, the Ryman was with my wife, but we took the kids to go see Neil Young play with Steve Earle opening at the Ascend outside here in Nashville. Cool. And that was a great show, mainly because to me, as a diehard Neil Young fan, I just concluded that we could walk out and I could be hit by a bus and killed, and it's okay. I did my job. My kids have seen Neil Young, so that's all that matters.
That's hilarious.
And I keep getting closer and closer to meeting him. I'm not like a nerd this way with people, but Neil Young's the only artist I want to meet in person to shake his hand and just to say thank you in a totally non-evasive kind of friendly way, because as a Canadian too, he's been the soundtrack of my life from all his different albums, and I respect him a lot, and I was into grunge music, as we were talking about growing up, and Neil Young really is Sonic Youth called Neil Young the godfather of grunge.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Neil Young, certainly both of those shows. I saw him play in Toronto with Crazy Horse and Booker T and the MGs in the 80s. And that was also a pretty cool show. So,
wow. He's he is literally beloved by probably three generations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the longevity of the music's amazing. He's amazing.
It really is. Yeah. I was starting to say, I've gotten close to meeting him 2 or 3 times, and for whatever reason it doesn't happen, but I swear, in a totally non-stalkerish way, by the way.
Right. That's cool. I've never met him. I've just seen him play.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. And where can folks get a hold of you and learn more?
Oh my gosh, you can easily find me on the First Horizon website. That's a great way. But if you want to reach out to me, if anyone wants to connect with me, do it via LinkedIn. I still love LinkedIn.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Well, we'll talk again soon.
Dave, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show today. Would you do me a favor? Leave a review. The reviews help others discover the show, and they mean a lot to me, so I would appreciate that. Did you know I am often hired as a keynote speaker for company retreats or for conferences? To find out more about that, you can visit davedelaney.speaks.com. Music by Alistair Crystal at alistaircrystal.ca. We'll see you next time, and be nice.
You may know you are listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Izzy House hosts a great podcast called the Space Marketing Podcast. Izzy, tell us what these fine folks will get out of listening.
Space Marketing Podcast is where we explore marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. I talk space with some very interesting industry professionals about their challenges and successes with marketing in the new commercial space economy. This show is for business leadership, entrepreneurs, and the space curious.
Wow. And where in the universe can people subscribe?
All of the major channels, and you can also find it on MPN and spacemarketingpodcast.com.
You heard her. Go subscribe.